Welcome, everybody. This week's Griscom stream. David here. It's been a little bit. I've been on a vacation last week, so figured might as well come back for a special Friday evening stream. Happy to take any questions or chat with y'all about what's on your mind. We got some things that are very important to start with to get to, but before we go down the rabbit hole, I do want to make sure that folks remember that we are going to be in New York City this Sunday, January 22nd at the Cutting Room in Manhattan. I'm going to be there with Ben Burgess, Jason Miles, Sam Cedar, Em Vigland, of course, Matt Leck and Bhaskar Shankar, and a good amount of folks. It's going to be a good time. And if you're coming, jump in the chat, let folks know. I'm really excited to be able to see everyone's face and hang out in person. We had such a good time at the LA show, and this one's set to be a mighty fine experience. So still a couple tickets left. I think we're sold out of the meet and greet, unfortunately, but there's definitely general admission tickets. And one quick reminder, just because there's a little bit of confusion on the site, 5 p.m. Eastern is the meet and greet. 6 is the regular doors open for admission. We're going to have really fun stuff, I think, starting around 6:45. So make sure that you get there a bit early, and then the show proper starts at 7. Stoked Katie's going to be there. Strom's on his way. And M. Toussaint, thanks for hanging out too. Yeah, I'm still here, but it's a pretty easy flight from Austin. It's direct now. So I'll be there tomorrow, and be there for Sunday. So I'm gonna put this in the chat. If people are looking for tickets, there's still a few available. I mean, this one looks like it's going to sell out. So definitely try to grab them as soon as you can. But yeah, folks, I've been away all week, so just forgive me. I haven't been able to keep up with everything. I really try to unplug for a little bit. But I'm happy to take some questions, chat about some things. Before we do that, there's been another big development in a brand of the left that I want to see continue to thrive. And maybe to open this up, let's go to the political master himself, Lula da Silva. This is from one of his speeches before getting reelected to the president of Brazil, talking about something near and dear to my heart.
Nós vamos voltar a ter o direito de, no final de semana, fazer churrasquinho em família, de comprar uma picanhazinha e aquele pedacinho de picanha com gordura passado na farinha e copo de cerveja gelado. É tudo que o povo precisa e é tudo que o povo tem direito. E é isso que a gente vai brigar para garantir para vocês.
And that's right. I mean, that's what we need to be seeing much more of as we start to build this into a serious political movement. We're talking barbecue socialism, folks. And I'm sure people have been seeing what's been going on in France, where there have been huge protests in opposition to attempts by the Macron government to raise the retirement age, something that he has been dead set on doing since coming into office and has been getting tremendous amounts of pushback. I just want to remind folks of that this is spreading. This is becoming a global movement. This barbecue socialism is happening everywhere. These are from some of the protests, I believe yesterday in France. If you see that, there's the march there, and it's being led by a grill, smoking some sausages up to feed the protesters as they're going. And there's many other angles on this. It's something we like to see, barbecue socialism spreading. I remember the degrowthers, who they don't like me very much, have sort of deridingly called me and a few of my friends sausage socialists, and happy to be one when you're seeing working people be able to celebrate and fight back together in that way. So really beautiful thing to see. So we're going to be continuing to build the sausage socialism, barbecue socialism over here at Left Reckoning. But I did want to, again, feel free to jump in with any questions or anything like that you might want to hear me talk about. But there's a couple stories I do want to look at. One is what's been happening in France, and as I said, earlier, these protests are in opposition to these attempts to lower the retirement age in in sorry, to raise the retirement age in France, which has been a really contentious thing, as it should be. But here's some of the pushbacks that we've seen, some of the more radical attempts by the unions to really show their power, something that I very much support. This is from yesterday, no, 2 days ago. French union threatens to cut electricity to MPs, billionaires amid nationwide strike. This is from Reuters. France's hardline CGT union has threatened to cut off electricity supplies to lawmakers and billionaires before a nationwide strike on Thursday in an increasingly acrimonious showdown over the government's plan to raise the retirement age. The proposed bill, announced last week, would see the retirement age pushed to 64 from 62, a move opinion polls show is opposed by a vast majority of workers already facing a cost of living crisis. Employees in sectors, including transport, education, and energy across France, will take part in Thursday's strike, with major protest marches expected in Paris and other cities. The industrial action is seen as a test of whether unions, who in the past years have struggled to convince people to strike, can transform this anger into mass social protest. And this is from one of the leaders of the CGT. I suggest they also go see the nice properties, the nice castles of the billionaires. It would be good if we cut off their electricity so they can put themselves for a few days in the shoes of the French people who can't afford to pay their bill. And I think that's exactly the kind of pushback and fights that we need to be seeing, across the board. Not only, using class language in the sense of, French workers are very different from the lawmakers. French workers are very different from the billionaires. French workers are very different from the people who are benefiting from these cuts to retirement in France, and also showing a little bit of that muscle. Remind folks that the fact is that our cause is not only a moral one but a structural one, in the sense that working people are the ones who create the vast majority of wealth. They produce the goods, they keep the lights on, they get the food on the table, and we can take that away. And to be able to do that, takes a lot of organization and commitment, obviously, from the class. But I do love to see a bit more of that militancy coming back. Not that the CGT or a lot of the French unions were wanting for it, but it's always a positive thing to see. Well, let's see. I'm going to check the chat to see what folks are saying, and if there's any questions, I'll try to answer them. I don't know how long today's going to go, because I do have to get up pretty early tomorrow, and I still have to pack and all that, but figured might as well pop on for a little bit since it's been a little while for me. Oh, actually, if you give me 1 second, let me pull this up. I know Strom's over here getting worked up about the technicalities of a barbecue versus a grill. Look, there's a time and place for that. I think this is a moment to show some international solidarity. And, we can call French sausage grill and barbecue if it helps build people power. But something else that Strom said did remind me of something that happened when I was on vacation. I really shouldn't have been on Twitter at all. But I did see something that cracked me up a good bit, and I got these boys pretty mad the other day. Just give me 1 second to find it. I hadn't intended to talk about this today, but I do think it's a lot of fun. Yankee Confederates, which is probably one of the goofiest groups you could be a part of. One, being a Confederate apologist and also living in the North. No offense to our friends up there, but I don't know. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me to sort of start talking. Like, it doesn't make sense in the South to say, hate not heritage, but it makes even less sense to be doing that out of New Jersey. I made these folks pretty mad the other day because I tweeted out something extra pathetic about non-Southern Confederate apologists, and the New Jersey flaggers responded and said, "Why is that? Historically, many non-Southern states like California, New York, Ohio, etc., have had highly successful SCVs, Sons of Confederate Veterans, and UDC chapters. We only keep growing. People move out, but keep true to their roots." And I said 2 L's at once: being a whiny Confederate apologist and being a Yankee. And they responded, "Being up north does not make one a Yankee. Actually, it does. Proud to have Confederate ancestry, including several who never signed oaths of amnesty." We're also getting more CSA flags out there. So look out for those little freaks if you're in the New Jersey area. Super goofy. And honestly, the reason I thought about that was not even because of the kind of classic Pennsylvania, New York State, New Jersey Confederate flag waivers. It was that I've been noticing on the more like far right sides of the internet a lot of British apologists for the Confederacy, which again, I think an even more goofy um, tradition to hold on to. Like, it doesn't make sense as a Southerner to to be a Confederate apologist, but it makes even less sense to be a Yankee or even a Brit and getting worked up about that shit. Um, but yeah, let's check out these chats here. We got to Kilgore, who jumps in and says, "Interesting thing about France, they don't do closed shop unionism. Unions will compete for workers within a given shop and industry. Very different dynamic in a good way." Yeah, I mean, having more openness is definitely a good thing. Um, Comrade Mike, good to hear from you, friend. Says, "Have you checked out Chicago's mayoral race coming up? Brandon Johnson seems like the real deal, backed by teachers union and Kianga Yamada Taylor. I have not been keeping up with it, but that's a great idea to get some guests on. We've been long overdue to cover what's been going on in Chicago. Chicago has had a pretty strong, DSA showing over the past few years, and a lot of the attention is on what's been happening in New York for reasons of the fact of how effective they've been. But we should definitely get some folks on from Chicago to be chatting about this soon." Awesome Possum says, "Barbecue socialism sounds ideal. I wonder if my local mutual aid group has thought about it." Yeah, y'all should do it. And Strom says, in response to those freaks, the New Jersey flaggers, copperheads. Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, it's weird that, a lot of the sorry, a friend in the Twitch chat says seeing Confederate flag flying from a pickup truck in Maine will always boggle my mind. I mean, I think a lot of them are freaks like that and are like straight up Confederate apologists. A lot of them are just stupid and do it because Hank Williams Jr. and 70s country that was sort of pushing that kind of stuff too. But it's super nasty tradition anywhere you see it, but it is very mind boggling when you see it up on the uh, up north for sure. And James has a question about Atlanta. We'll get to that in just a second. I actually have some sound for that. So we'll get to that in 1 second, but let's see if I can get to the bottom here before we pull that up. Somebody says, "Do you recommend Thaddeus Russell's book Out of the Jungle?" He's a weirdo, but I think that book is about inter-union competition in the U.S. I'm not familiar with that, so I can't say nothing about that. Let's see. Yes, and James has a James also says, also wondering if you heard about the fake police accountability petition was funded by the Austin Police Union. Yeah, I have seen those reports. So for people who aren't familiar, basically the Austin Police Department here, or the police union, was pushing this kind of really duplicitous signature drive here in Austin, coming out to people and basically lying to them to get them to sign these petitions, that were very pro cop, but would say things like, "Oh, this is to reform the police department. This is to, do, whatever it is that you might be interested in seeing done." And they basically lied to a tremendous amount of people. And as James is reminding us, they dropped about $280,000 into that. So I don't know. Some of our friends of Mike's watching. You could tell folks. I think there's a way to pull your signature if you had mistakenly signed that, or if the deadline has passed. It might be too late. But if you have that info out there, I'd love to share that with folks. Our friend Adam, good to hear from you, friend. Hope you're doing well. Says, "I guess I'm going to make a progressive Republican caucus thoughts in Iowa." Duh, LOL. I mean, our friend Kowalski has talked about running in the Nebraska Republican Party. Um, my opinion on that is like let 1,000 of flowers bloom. If it works, great. I have some doubts about the veracity of the strategy, but why not fuck with them a little bit if anything else. And this is actually a great point by Daredevil too. This flagger stuff is so dumb. Your family tree branches out so much, so they cherry picking one ancestor out of dozens to celebrate a bigoted political agenda, and I think that's very true. M. Toussaint says she wants her ranch water. Well, M. Toussaint, I mean, you're going to be you're backstage at the show. Let's see if they get some tequila. I'll make you one. I'll bring some topos for us. Also, on Civil War stuff, we're working on it, but I think we're going to do a big Reconstruction episode in the next couple of months. I don't know how interested people are in doing, more leftist looks at the Civil War and Reconstruction. I think it's something that is really viable and important for us to be investigating right now. So I think we're going to do a few of them. So let us know if that's something you're interested in, and also if you want to see us, if there's any particular, areas or histories or subjects that you'd like us to cover when we start to do that. But I think we might try to even build out a kind of Civil War Reconstruction series here on Left Reckoning. I know Matt's very interested in that, as am I. I'm not familiar with this. Custodial artist says, David, have you heard of Tennessee Williams' Union Dixie? No, I have not. Is this a play by Tennessee Williams? I love Tennessee Williams stuff across the board, so definitely interested. Let me know more. And Mike, update on the Austin police fake petition stories. Reporting this week just confirmed it was 99% funded by the Austin Police Association. It's really disgusting stuff, and shows you, what the police departments think about the general public, that y'all are rubes to be tricked. And thanks, Mike. Mike Lewis says, "Yay, Reconstruction coverage. Definitely want to be doing that." Well, Strom, what is this? Tennessee Ernie Ford? I'm not familiar with what we're talking about. But let's because James asked us about what's going on in Atlanta. I want to make sure that we cover this. We'll definitely do more on this. These streams are more casual, so I don't have a big show or anything planned on it. But if folks remember, we did a segment a couple weeks ago, and other people have always been covering this about what's been happening in Atlanta, where the city government is basically forcing a cop city to be built in an area of Atlanta, despite the fact that there's tremendous amounts of public outcry, protest against it, including occupations of the proposed site that have been ongoing for a prolonged period of time. When we did that coverage, we warned that the police were already getting more and more aggressive with the protesters, and we're worried about what that was going to mean for the life and safety of those people who are, participating in their democratic right to push back against something that does not have support of the people, has been sort of pushed through by city council, which is completely in bed with the police unions and the police departments in Atlanta. And unfortunately, there's been a casualty. One of these protesters was shot and killed by a police officer in Atlanta in the past few days. And here's a segment from Democracy Now! Talking about that, breaking it down with one of the leaders of the push to stop Cop City being built in Atlanta.
For more, we go to Atlanta to speak with Kamau Franklin, founder of the organization Community Movement Builders. Kamau, welcome back to Democracy Now! Can you please tell us what you understood happened?
Well, we have very little information on what took place besides what your earlier recording just said, that the only version of events that's really been released to the public has been the police version, the police narrative, which we should say the corporate media has ran away with. To our knowledge so far, we find it less than likely that the police version of events is what really happened. The idea that he was sitting in a tent and fired out of the tent at basically a SWAT team, DeKalb County Police, Atlanta Police, and Georgia State Troopers who were there in great numbers to do the raid that they conducted in the park. And the idea is that this person shot and then they fired back. As the little intel that we have, residents said that they heard a blast of gunshots all at once, not one blast and then a return of fire. Also, there's been no other information released. We don't know how many times this young person was hit with bullets. We don't know the areas in which this person was hit. We don't know if this is potentially a friendly fire incident. All we know is what the version of the police have given. And that's why we're calling for an independent investigation, not one that's done by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, not one that's done by any federal authority, but a complete independent investigation. Because that's the only way we're going to know what really happened. But right now, based on what we do know, we cannot say anything except that this is probably a political assassination. This is something that could have been prevented. There was no reason for them to take the tactics that they did in terms of going into the forest with weapons in hand, with pepper spray, with live ammunition to go shoot forest defenders who were engaging in civil disobedience and direct action politics.
Kamau Franklin, can we step back and talk about what Cop City, proposed Cop City is and why people are encamped there?
Cop City is an idea that came after the 2020 uprisings by the city of Atlanta, the Atlanta Police Department, and the Atlanta Foundation, Atlanta Police Foundation. The idea basically is that they want to develop a militarized police base that's right next to a black and brown working class community. And by building this space, they want to cut down over 100 acres of forest. They want to develop an area where there's a room for explosives testing, over 12 firing ranges, a place where there's a Black Hawk helicopter landing pad, a training center for them to practice crowd control. We should also mention that they are engaged in international training with the Israeli police. And so we think this project really is the beginning of a militarized police base here in Atlanta, which will be the largest facility of its kind in the country. And the reason for doing this, coming out of the uprisings, we believe, is to stop movement politics and movement building in Atlanta, to coordinate efforts across the country with other police departments and now internationally to stop movement building. And we think this is going to be further sort of terroristic action on black and brown communities by a police state, which is out of control at this particular stage.
Yeah. And I mean, one, the loss of life is tragic. It's something that is not surprising given the rhetoric and the way that we know how police departments operate, not just across the country, but, in the South as well. And, I think that they're 100% right in saying that this is a show of force of not just the murder, but the entirety of the Cop City project, to be building a training facility inside of the city that is right by communities that have been affected by the brutal police state in this country, and the way that the police are able to get away with it. The fact is that the media has, obviously, as they typically do, run away with the police recounting of the story without any real serious investigation as to how true the claims of the police department were. When it comes down to most of the media reports that I've seen, a lot of words are spent about the police officer who was shot without a lot of investigation. Again, could it have been friendly fire? Was it an act of self-defense? It's truly despicable to be sitting here in a country where a lot of people consider themselves to live in a democracy, where you see that we have armed forces that act in their own interests, as we were just talking about a minute ago here in Austin, lying to the public to get their signatures on petitions, so that they can use that to bolster their funding and their protection from investigation, from accountability for their actions. From places like New York City, where Bill de Blasio, no radical or anything like that, had his family doxxed by the police department for making very mild criticisms of the police. I mean, you have to remember, when it comes to police departments in this country, the vast majority of them are operating as rogue forces, and that shouldn't make you comfortable. More often than not, it's not the civilian government that is overseeing the police departments. It's the police departments that are telling and setting terms for local governments as to what they do. It should be something that should be worrying to specifically to leftists, but anybody who lives in this country. Even the most boneheaded back the blue people, they can cite a negative interaction with police. Because police do not act in the general public's interest. They act in the interest of the wealthy. They act in the interest of property. And in the case of Cop City, it's just clear as day that the public has not been adequately considered or listened to, while city officials and elected city government officials have basically ignored the public outcry about this project that nobody in the community wants, save for the police unions and a few of the more ferocious backers of the police state, and are pushing this through violently at this point. Daredevil says people say they don't want more cops, and there will be more innocent deaths. The government says that's not true, as those cops kill the very people raising the concerns. How did they not see it? I think that's an excellent point. But let's see. I'll go down and read some of these chats. I'd be happy to take a couple questions before I roll. So if you're hearing this now, this is a good time to get questions. Happy to talk about any topic. But if there's nothing, I might run after this. Strom says, Cop City, the pigsty. And let's see. Good to hear from you, John. Well, unless anybody has any questions or things that they might want to hear about, there'll be opportunities to talk at the New York show coming up in just 2 days. We definitely are going to have some episodes on what's going on in Peru in the near future. We're definitely going to be doing some more stuff on the Civil War. I think we might do another big episode with some folks talking about the need for nuclear power in this country and globally to fight the climate crisis. And folks, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. And I'll see everybody in New York City this Sunday at the Cutting Room. You can still grab your tickets. Would be wonderful to see as many of y'all as possible there. It's going to be a hell of a time. And until then, folks, take care and see you soon.